calling in should be fine. Like calling in for a year.
Every now and then I
not
have to
so
sit
fine.
down with my mother and explain.
But I'm going on vacation. I'm going to the pool.
So,
getting some
so we're
sunshine.
gonna have Alicia, Elisa, and Mark gone
On the 18th.
on the 18th. So we'll have a quorum.
Kind of.
Maybe.
Now we have to, for anything to
If the
pass.
people that show up get a little bonus.
For something to pass, it has to be four affirmative votes for something to pass. Now
I
the
was
question
an
is,
officer
if
statewide.
people are calling in and voting, do those count? They have in the past.
I believe the
But
policy
if-
says that their electronic votes do count. It just doesn't count for attendance.
That's illogical.
It just doesn't count.
For attendance.
Well, I'll see, and if
Yeah.
there's something that's important, that's weird. If it's just like something that we're all gonna vote on, I'm not calling it. Because I can't hear.
Now, the superintendent's gonna be here
And I apologize immediately afterwards saying that.
Mike is working on it.
I meant to say, yeah.
I asked him if he had one.
Really okay.
Because I remember you saying that
Yeah,
they
superintendent's just not today.
But I did not say it.
Dr. Bishop will be here, but I hope she can stay the whole time. But Mark stopped.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't say it.
Because we got the two recommendations.
All I did was listen to Chugiak email about ad hoc community recommendation. Because I don't have a memo. We're not voting.
Well, that'll be a short meeting.
I'll get it for you.
Yeah, he likes to wait until 5 minutes into the meeting and then.
That's why you go through staff things.
Really, like, as chief academic officer, it's my job to make sure it's like.
He does that more often than not. It's Mike that turns our lights off.
That's my new role.
Yeah, it's just time to.
Yeah, they look for something.
They're making it.
Yeah.
They want me to resign.
So Elisa, so we're just gonna review the recommendations, right? And then
Tom said he's got the, is this what ROM, what he meant by ROM?
I'm eating my bread.
that's not your job.
What is it? I'll tell you.
He said that he was gonna send, he'll have copies of the ROM, you know what that's? ROM? Is it range of magnitude or something?
Yeah, but rough order of magnitude.
Yes.
Hi, you can sit here. I was just wondering, I made a doctor's appointment for 3:10. I was looking about Mark is ready. Everybody's ready to do whatever you need. I just cannot believe it. I saw it on my calendar at 2.
Point to her name, where's her name?
I was like,
Yeah, that's a very special seat.
but now I'm like getting over being sick, but what do you tell her?
They are my favorite elevator riding buddies. I love it.
If you're sitting quietly in your seat, hey, be gentle with each other.
He just packed much of a riding buddy.
He's a sweet little boy.
Yeah.
Oh, they asked you?
Oh, no, it made my day.
It's good to be loved by kids. I teach a little Sunday school class. The kids are not.
So there's either going to Legos.
Yeah. With all the details. They'll be short sleeves.
So they're debating if their dad is flying the plane.
He's not fine.
Okay.
Well, he gets to right up front in the team unless there's another school, but we all have to see track.
Okay.
Sacrifice.
That's so cool.
I'm excited.
Well, have a good trip. Have fun.
Near Anaheim, just kind of in between there and the beach. Nice.
Kids told me Legoland.
Yeah, we got some Legoland. Jason wants to go to Disney for a day, but I really don't want to. I just want to be a little bit calmer. So Legoland's being a little calmer.
Yeah.
I just want to go outside. start, and I just get so that she can hard sleep time, and I said, we're not gonna travel. We weren't even going on something, right, but vacation,
You guys are requesting your money.
fine, but yeah, it's just hard, and they're getting to the age where it's
It is hard.
He's in, he's in June.
I mean, it's like hard, but like not
no, no.
real travel. Like, no, I can't really travel at the optimal time. Like, you know, we're doing fine.
So where are you guys going?
California, so like,
Oh, that'll be fun. This week?
not responding to any emails.
I won't send you any.
So this mom, so I get this email about this one thing, and then the mom shows up at a play date. She's like, oh, do you think the person would call? I was like, who's the person who would call this talk to me? And then like I'm leaving, I tell my girlfriend, tell her not to call her spring break. I'm not answering my phone. She's like, spring break. Off the radar.
I don't know either.
I wish I could say that. No, tonight is a chamber, so you're going to a chamber.
A chamber concert?
No, forum.
Oh.
For,
Oh, you got your campaign.
and David needs to attack me like you would not believe.
Yeah, it's kind of.
I didn't understand it.
But I mean, hardly anybody goes to those. In the big scheme of municipality, average like that's not
I know, but that's the scary thing.
It's kind of, but there is.
Is what it is. I wouldn't be able to survive something.
Oh, yes, you would.
Oh, no, I wouldn't.
I have thin skin too, but you just, you know.
I don't.
Oh, well, I less so because once you start moving, you just have to be like,
It
be
is.
obsessed. Yeah, normal or you just go. Like that's a very good.
Push those numbers out to one.
And I like the thing.
These numbers?
Yeah, we're gonna push them in June and then I'll send it finance to make it.
And I sent them to Laura Reinbold's office as per request from Lisa.
I'll get them to Michael Johnson.
And then
Steve.
they're also posted.
Very thorough, very good. I thought it was very good. I thought it was awesome, yeah. Good, good, good.
Oh, on the Facebook Live?
Yeah. I'm choosing spread my mouth real quick. So at this time, I'm going to call this special meeting to order. It's March 11th, 2019. It's 2 o'clock. And the purpose of this meeting is discussion on the Chugiak Eagle River Ad Hoc Committee recommendation. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to the chair, who is Ms. Snelling.
Thank you, and I'd also like to invite Mr. Roth and anybody he'd like to have with him up front. And just wanted to give the board an update on, where the ad hoc committee decisions came from on Friday afternoon. I do see some committee members and saying thank you to those that are here in attendance. So the first recommendation, and I'll just take it school by school, and I'll just kind of bounce back and forth with Mr. Roth here, is Eagle River Elementary School. And the committee did recommend, it was unanimous with the exception of the Chugiak Eagle River Chamber of Commerce seat, and Eklutna was also missing from that meeting as well. But otherwise, everybody else voted in support of doing the $12.1 million damage repair and seismic mitigation plan.
Ms. Hilde?
Just to clarify, we're doing this is the long-term plan?
Yes, correct, because on the March 4th, the board did vote to do the
For
1
the short-
year.
So this is all.
Yeah, and so this is looking at the longer term component of these buildings.
Going into effect like, well, I guess it would depend on each project, I guess. Okay, I just trying to clarify mine.
Yeah. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that question or answer?
So through the chair, if I might. So to get to Member Hilde's question, so the panel, through a Member Snelling is proposing a recommendation to the board for action to repair both schools. So what that does, if the board does concur with that recommendation, it would allow the administration to move forward with at least the RFP process for design for both Eagle River Elementary School and for greening. And then the outcomes of that RFP, depending on the amount, and we would expect that amount would exceed the $500,000 threshold, that we would come back to the board, and then the board would actually approve the bids, the successful bids for both design projects. So I think that's kind of what we're starting in this process, and we will to memorialize the recommendation or the concurrence or non-concurrence of the board, if that's the outcome. If it's concurrence, on the 18th we'll come forward with a memorandum, board memorandum that would memorialize a board decision to move forward, to allow the administration to move forward on the repairs, if that answers your question.
And so just to, the committee on Friday came up with the 3 recommendations, and we did vote separately for each one of them. The first one being the Eagle River Elementary School, and the second one being Greening Middle School. And you've got the table with the project estimate on it to do the $24.2 million, version. That one was accepted with the exception of 3. All but 3 votes, 4, with including also missing, and I've got the other name at home. And so that one did pass. And the third one of the things that really came out of these discussions with the committee members was there's the capital, the component of this, the repairing of the buildings that needed to happen, but there's also another side of, the softer side of things, whether it is student nutrition components or busing components or curriculum components at all the various levels, and what this process looks like through the short term and through some of the longer term. And the ad hoc committee did put forth a motion and a second, and it passed to set up a secondary or request another committee be set up to continue that discussion so that that doesn't stop, that they can work through some of those conversations and answers with the administration. And that also passed very much in favor of having that conversation continue. And so what that would look like, I would leave to the president and the superintendent. But those are the 3 recommendations that did come out of the Friday's committee meeting. And so the purpose of today is to make sure that board members that are here, obviously, and we'll catch up the others as soon as we can, make sure that you guys are caught up in all the conversation and understanding where everything came from and the conversations, and ask questions if you have them.
And so I just want to state that we had talked about an ad hoc committee, and one of the things after discussing that a little bit further is we have I guess a lot of committees going on right now and a lot of things with the budget, and so our members are kind of stretched then as everyone else. So what we'd like to do is work with Dr. Bishop in forming this committee, which means the board, can attend any of those meetings, which I'm sure we will, and be part or of this process without having to do an ad hoc committee. I think we can accomplish what we need to do. So that would be my recommendation. Because there are, as you said, still a lot of unanswered questions that need to be brought forward, and work together with the district and the individuals that are most affected by this. So, and I think it is not board policy that sets that. That would be more administration in their management, although the board will work with it, yes. Ms. Hilde.
Mr. Roth, could you just talk a little bit on what the state of Eagle River and Greening were before the earthquake, as far as what they were slated for replacement cycle or major repair, the age of the building? My concern is, certainly there's a huge difference in, say, for example, the repair cost for Greening versus a replacement cost, but is it going to come up again in 10 years where it's really the age of the building is just kind of, worn out at that point? So I'm
Sure.
just talking a bit about that.
So through the president to Member Hilde. So I'll just take each school in turn. So Eagle River Elementary School is not in any long-range plan for major renovation or replacement. In fact, as you well know, one of the projects on this bond going before the voters in April was to replace the roof. And the amount on the bond is about $6.2 million. So for Greening, although it's not on the 6-year plan, the administration, looking a little bit further down the road, was looking at Greening as a candidate for replacement. I think about year 7 or 8 on the plan that we had developed internally. But it had not been really presented to the board again, because we don't really present beyond 6 years. So to get to your question, what is, with regards to the repairs of Eagle River? So the immediate repairs primarily affect 2 walls in the gymnasium. The 1984 construction, generally speaking, was a bit challenged in the earthquake, but there are 2 walls that effectively came detached from the roof diaphragm. Also, there was a brick facade in the exterior of the gymnasium that was breaking away, and then there were some CMU walls in the interior of the building that, because of the motion of the building, became the mortar between the wall, the CMU, and the existing wall, started to crack, in multiple cracks. So the repairs are primarily to correct those deficiencies. Now, the additional, Eagle River, I think right now is rated on the scale of 0 to 10. I think it's sitting around 4 in terms of its seismic resilience. So one of the proposals as a part of this 12.1 million, one is to replace the roof, which is a really kind of a component of the seismic resilience of the building. We plan to do it anyways. But also to increase the resilience in the overall building, to bring it up to a level 6.5 on the scale of 0 to 10 for damage control. So that's Eagle River Elementary School. In Greening, again, the biggest seismic issues, there is a wall in the gymnasium that again kind of became detached from the roof. Also, a stairwell on the east side of the gymnasium demonstrated significant cracking and failure, like the stairwell was separating from the building. So that stairwell will be replaced. The wall will be properly attached. It's also Greening. We knew had some issues with the roof. It leaked a lot. It was not a good design. So it was recommended, although it's not immediate to the repair of earthquake-caused damages, it was recommended that we would replace the roof concurrent with doing the repairs and then other seismic improvements in the building. So to get to your final point, what does this mean long-term? I think if we move forward on this would truly give Greening a longer lease on life as a building, because if you replace the roof, and the roof would have some significant engineering improvements over the existing roof, that if you get that over the building envelope, you're really starting to protect the building much better. Now, it still has HVAC systems and boilers that will probably be replaced over time, but the building itself, the roof will extend the life considerably. Eagle River, again, these repairs increasing the seismic resilience. There was no plan to replace that school. That I have no timeline when that school would be replaced in the future.
And we do have, I believe, Dave Donnelly and Dina Mitchell also on the phone. Okay. Do they have any questions or?
Did you have any questions?
No?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay.
Me.
All right. Is there anything else that we need to go over before we call? I've got a couple people who are signed up to speak and testify, and some others, I'm sure.
I can't think of anything right off the top. Just wanted to, just make sure that the board had the information, and just to share my appreciation of the committee and the process that it went through. I know that it, had its, fits and starts and stuff like that. It was a lot of learning and a lot of, information for many people that came out really fast in a short amount of time. And I'm just appreciative that everybody took the time to ask the questions and, bring their ideas. And so I'm grateful to all of them for participating in the process, and hope that they will continue to stay a part of the process, going forward.
Yes, Dr. Bishop.
And just, I want to convey that as well, and just actually working with the community, and since really the November 30th, this isn't chartered waters already. So the movements that we've been taking and doing have not been, there isn't a playbook on it. And so I appreciate the board sharing and identifying, that there's still needs out there. And we look as administration, whether it's really continuing on the short-term concerns as well as long-term, to work with the community, the employees, parents, because really we're making the most of something that is just a difficult thing to have gone through. But we're here to assist and resolve and see what we can do. Of course, everything won't be the best as it was. It probably can't be how it used to be. But we look to orient ourselves to the future and really have terrific schools. Next year, the year after, and the year after, and then some repaired schools as well. So appreciate that, and we'll continue to work with the folks involved. Thank you.
Mr. Holloman.
And I do have a question. I think we'll hear in some of the testimony that there's some defects in the schools before November 30th. Ventilation was one. Has there been any process to collect issues that we would want to correct in the process of the kind of major renovations we're going to have to do? And to be honest, it would surprise me if it has happened, just because of the time frame. But I'm curious if anybody has a handle on the scope of how much that might cost.
So if I might, through the president to Member Hallman, we do have the two assigned project managers from CP&C for both Eagle River Elementary School, and that's Nick Bell, who's in the audience, and Yuki Jansen, who is the designated project manager for Greening Middle School. I'm happy to bring them forward and talk to any of these.
They're forward, actually.
Well, what do you know?
Yeah.
Their ears must have been burning. So Nick, if you would, you want to come back and just, I don't want to put Nick on the spot, because again, he's working with really the architectural engineering firm that did the PAR. So I think we've identified the shortcomings in the building. In fact, both these schools have a pretty lengthy history of shortcomings. But in terms of any specifics, Nick, is there anything that you can add? You got to hit that.
Well, not specifically. We're some of the things that we would be covering that maybe not specifically earthquake related was the improvement in the security at the front entrance, which is an important thing. And I've done a couple of those type projects also. But in terms of other than specific component renewal like we've done at some other schools, it's not really part of this project at this point. And it is all a matter of funding. Obviously, it would be great to get in there and do it and make it right and say we can walk away from it and be good for 20 years. But we can work with the system that's there and do the improvements and the repairs and the seismic improvements as is necessary to get that school up and operational. I just recently finished up the West Roaming IMC renovation, which was another seismically induced project from the 2016 earthquake, so I have a bit of familiarity with this type of repair work.
Thank you for the term seismically induced.
He's an engineer, he can't say broken. It'd be too simple. Thanks, Vic. Yuki, anything to add?
Follow-up, I guess.
Sure, Mr. Holman.
I'm just going to say, as we move forward, I think it's important that we try to gather that from everybody, that there may be things out there that weren't on anybody's agenda in a functioning building, but if, to me, that was part of the money that we voted in for the Eagle River schools, was if we saw something like that wasn't necessarily damaged by the earthquake, and we may not get any FEMA money or state money for, but it just makes an awful lot of sense to do it while you're into the roof or into things like that we work with staff and folks to find out if there were problems like that.
And
Okay, so for the Eagle River, in 2015, we did a component replacement. So a lot of the mechanical and electrical were addressed back then. 2014, they got new windows and new doors. So Eagle River has been on the path of improvement slowly but surely. And that's why this 2019 was for the roof replacement with structural improvements. And that Eagle River, it's a smaller building, so it's a smaller problems, I guess. For greening, on 2013, we started a PAR process, a more comprehensive study than what we are doing currently, because the building was built as a junior high, so it doesn't serve the purposes of a middle school. So we did an extensive report, and we came with solutions from BLE to intermediate renewal to extended renewal to school replacement. And it went to stall, and last 2 or 3 years we've been like CIAC and CIP conversations of what will be better for greening, component replacement, a VLE, or school replacement, and that's what it was led to year seven for further discussion. And right now, the funding that we are allocating, the 24, is for roof replacement. And yes, there's going to be some mechanical improvement, but we are not being we don't have the funding to address all the issues that greening have.
So, and I was on that committee in 2013 that did that comprehensive study, and I know that there's a lot of deficiencies with greening when we were looking at that. Is there anything that precludes us as a, I mean, my thought is we're going in there anyway, can we at least find out what we could do and what the cost would be, and maybe as a board, a vote to include that? I mean, at least have the report and take a look at it. Yeah. Because I think if we're gonna go in there and do things, we ought to look and see what else we can do.
To the President, yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. That is the board, okay, on board with that, yeah. If we could just get that report, dollar amount, what we're looking at that we could possibly do while we're doing this, I think that would be very helpful, and we should try to move forward with that if we can. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, if there's no other board comments or anything, I would like to call Marnie Hartnell and Valerie, I'm sorry, I didn't put my glasses on, Valerie.
Rather rude.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Marnie Hartell. You all know me as an activist and leader in Anchorage Education Association. I do not speak for AEA here. You may also know that I was recently transferred from Bartlett to Greening Middle School this fall. While I'm new to the Greening Cole family, I feel that it is important to voice my personal concerns about the long-term plan in response to the earthquake damage incurred on November 30th. When I first moved to my classroom at Greening, I often found temperatures in one classroom chilly and the next classroom overheated like a sauna. I learned from my colleagues that if I close all of my window blinds, I could maybe keep my classroom warm enough for students not to complain so much. In the computer lab later in the afternoon, my students and I smelled gas fumes daily. I learned that this was normal and that the ventilation problems from the daily lineup of school buses were a known issue. There are serious plumbing problems in the science labs and low ductwork issues in the downstairs classrooms, and my colleagues can tell you more about that. In staff meetings and informal sessions, discussions, I learned that Greening Middle School was on the docket for 6th grade students to arrive, requiring added portables outside, and many staff were also concerned about getting enough input on the bond measure, whether all of the issues at Greening could really be fixed with the bond funds provided. And the building had a long list of maintenance issues, but that was before the earthquake. Now I teach in a windowless classroom at Chugiak High School. My students and colleagues don't feel 100% welcome there. If you'd like specific examples, I have several. We can talk about that in private, but that's another issue. I want to share my own personal views at this point, and I believe that Greening Middle School should be demolished and that a new Greening should be rebuilt adjacent to Eagle River High School. There are a number of reasons for this, reasons which I do not have time to share. I hope that you will reach out and poll the community more about your long-term plan for Greening. We were promised that ASD would hear suggestions on long-term plans when we gave feedback on the short-term survey. Please deliver on that pledge and open up discussions and forums for families to communicate what they want for the future site of Greening Middle School. Do not be dissuaded by current politics. Governors come and go, but the school board's decision to close a school or move a school indefinitely will last hundreds of years and define the community. Thank you for taking time to hear my testimony.
Thank you. Is there, before you begin, is there anyone else that would like to testify? Please come up to the microphone. Yes, please. Just state your name and spell your last name, please. And Valerie, you can begin.
Thank you to the board and to the community for allowing me to speak with you today about your plans for the schools in the Eagle River area. As an Eagle River community member, a teacher at Eagle River High School, the parent of 2 Eagle River High School students, the parent of a Greening Middle School student, and the parent of a toddler who will one day attend an elementary school in Eagle River, one could say that I have a lot of skin in the game. That said, learning about how I advocate in all of those areas has been elusive, to say the least. This process has been confusing, frustrating, and strangely secretive. Rather than an email or a website update, I learned about today's meeting via a friend's Facebook page. When trying to follow up, confirm the meeting, and learn more details, I found nothing anywhere within ASD's communications. It seems very, as my high school students would say, sus, that means suspicious, to hold this meeting at the last minute during spring break while many are out of town and no widespread announcement. According to a KTUU article yesterday, quote, the ad hoc committee gave the parents and community members direct access to the school board and a platform to make their voices heard, unquote. I have no idea who is even on the ad hoc committee. The meetings were closed to the public. That's not what I consider having my voice heard. It's my understanding as well that there was no direct representation on the committee from either ERHS or CHS, nor from the JBEAR community, all of whom I believe are valid stakeholders in this process, especially as the discussion turned several times apparently toward potential consolidation of high schools. If indeed that is going to be a legitimate consideration now or in the future, all interested parties must be given an opportunity to advocate their positions. I'm not here today to advocate for my high school, but to be certain that if and when that time arrives, I will strongly do so. We have something very special at Eagle River High School that is replicated nowhere else in the district. In fact, I would even say the state. But as a debate coach, I can see the value in looking at all sides of an issue and gaining as much information as possible. There's no reason that all options cannot be put on the table for examination, but everyone must be invited to that table. To say that the district has been transparent and invited the community into the process, to me, does not seem truthful. As I see it, you have 2 options. Truly invite the community, allow for stakeholder input, or do not. Take the facts and the info that you are privy to and make the decisions that you see best. But please don't claim to value community interest with only the guise of transparency. The decisions that you make are impacting me as a community member, an educator, and most importantly, the parent of 4 ASD students. Please validate my faith in your steadfast commitment to your constituents through genuine honesty and communication. To do otherwise allows for the generation of rumors, anxiety, and unnecessary division of communities. In order to keep the focus where it truly should be, the success and safety of our students, please don't make decisions in the dark. Do it right out in front of us. And again, I thank you so much for your time, especially Elise Snelling, for all that you do for ASD. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Kaylee Watring, W-O-T-R-I-N-G. So first I want to thank you for holding the meetings, forming the ad hoc committee, and most importantly, listening to our community. You listened to our concerns and our fears, and I don't know how much you took to heart, but you put it out there. I understand that there are a lot of things that go on behind the scenes, things that we as community members have to trust you to make informed decisions about. The ad hoc committee, and I'm not sure if I can address you directly, but you told us that you were going to, you assured us that we would form another committee to further discuss things that were obviously concerns of other community members. You told us that we would be able to discuss the long-term plans, the possibility of the high schools and other things. It sounds now like this conversation isn't going to happen. Not quite sure if I understood that correctly. So I was on the ad hoc committee, and I voted no for greening to be fixed, and I did that very purposely. First of all, I was afraid that that would shut down all the rest of the conversations about long-term opportunities for our community. And secondly, I think that there are things that are issues with greening that cannot be addressed by fixing them. I've heard many things about joining sixth graders with greening, becoming a 7, 8, 9, a 6, 7, 8, and it was never designed to be a 6, 7, 8, and we just heard a person tell us that it wasn't ever designed for that, and it was already in discussions to be rebuilt, and I think that discussion never happened in the ad hoc committee. So I voted no, not because I don't think greening isn't important, but because we didn't get to discuss it as we should have. On a separate issue, both greening and Eagle River Elementary, when they're repaired, they need to have some upgrades. The technology and the security, especially in Eagle River Elementary, just are not they don't match up with the other schools. They are far behind. It's been bypassed for some reason. That's it. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Do I have anyone else that would like to testify? So, not that we normally respond to testimony, but this committee that's going to be formed is not going to bypass the discussions that you want to have, but correctly, there weren't the people there that needed to be represented to have those discussions. So they do need to be in a sense where, yes, it will be community members, it'll be all those stakeholders, so that everybody can have something to contribute. And so I'll even let Dr. Bishop talk a little further about that.
Yeah, thank you. And really those are bigger, major community concerns. And certainly in the short term, it was very open. People could ask, there were surveys passed out. The short term was totally to get the community's input about what can we do for these short term. The long term, in the short term and the long term, it was what are we going to do with those buildings? So there has not been an opportunity, hence Eagle River and Chugiak were not invited to the table because it literally was about Eagle River and greening. And the high schools have over a 15-year discussion in the community for which this initial survey turned that the community is at odds. There is no agreement. If during this time, when it was absolutely open, if there was overwhelming, convincing things that we shouldn't move with a short-term solution, or to look at those schools, we could have halted it. We haven't moved forward, but there is no collusion. There isn't any interest in the school district or the board to close schools, which was mentioned today, if you want to close schools or move schools. None of that has come up from administration, and I think the discussions within the community, I've read this Facebook post too, they certainly are around that, from traditional Chugiak families that really enjoyed having a very large high school for all the many reasons that that brings, the economy of scale. I've also been to both high schools several times, and there is a school pride within each to remain as they are. So there isn't, at this present time, an interest from the district to move one way or another. However, if the community desires to move through some of those conversations, we're happy to do so, and to bring them back. It would be bigger than just the schools, because it's really a community, and we will certainly do that. But I want to share there isn't the purpose of the meetings, I believe, were posted. I think we carried out the purpose of those meetings. There was never a purpose to close a school, change a school on our end. It was to move through this earthquake with the best information that we had in moving forward. At this time, coming from the feedback, there's some interest in continuing the conversation. You can be guaranteed that the conversation will be continued with the community and the input in the long term, as well as the short-term concerns in regard to just services to the school, busing routes, meals, student meals, how are we going to organize for instruction, things like that. Honestly, these are everyday issues, honestly, that administration works through with schools, and we encourage our community and our employees to start at the school level. There's processes to meet weekly with our teams at the schools, and as we need to get larger, we'll organize those, advertise those however we can. But I want to guarantee that on our side, it was looking at what are we going to do? And at the time of the short term, if you can recall, we did not have the engineering reports in. We had no idea whether they would come back and say any of those schools would be unusable. And if that were the case, we would be talking about a different long term. However, what came back was that they can be fixed, and they can be repaired for a reasonable cost. And what I heard from the community is that they want their schools, especially from Eagle River Elementary School, that they desired their school, and so we moved that way. The greening Chugiak, not so much because of the bigger issues of school combination, but as strongly as I heard the Chugiak community that want to merge, I've strongly heard from the Eagle River community not to merge. So this is not, there are no simple solutions, and we didn't pick a solution, because we know there's a lot out there. So I can assure you it will continue. What we want to do is bring the best resources, the best experiences to our kids, take care of our staffs at the schools, and move forward with a really positive year, not only next year, but for the next 10 years. We do know from the Western Demographics research and demographic report that the community of Eagle River, Chugiak, and moving into Peters Creek will need 2 middle schools, 2 high schools in the future. And that was part of this planning from before the earthquake. Thank you.
So I would ask if Dina Mitchell or Dave Donnelly has any comments.
I have no comments at this time.
No? Okay. Is there any other board questions? Mr. Holloman.
One real quickly, just that when this whole event that started on November 30th, which wasn't that long ago, it's a very difficult thing to go forward and cross all the T's and dot all the I's. And I think it's important that the school board is always a listener of last resort for anyone in the district, anybody in the community. It's been brought up by some people that they are being encouraged not to speak to the board. And again, I just want to say as a board member, no ASD staff person should ever do that. And sometimes people will come because there's been a misunderstanding, or they may not have all their facts right and everything, and we should get to vet that out. But people should always be encouraged to come here. And it's not anybody in the room that said that, but it's some some messages I've gotten other ways. I hope the administration will carry that message through their chain of command, that people get to come speak, and we'll try to work with what they say the best we can.
Thank you, Mr. Haldeman. If there are no other, Mr. Stock, do you have anything to add? Okay. Ms. Snelling, anything else? Okay. If I could have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. We are adjourned.
Hi, Dave.